This is the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses of Arizona, bringing you information about the occult of the organization known as Watchtower, with its members known as Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're interested in occult tactics and false religion, this might be a channel for you.
With that introduction out of the way, let's get started and let's let the truth shine light and lead the way.
I think it's really important to understand about corporate takeover, and I want to share the experience that me and you all know before I share the clip that I want to share with you guys, which is the point of this entire video. I want you guys to understand how corporate entities can take over industries, companies, etc., etc. And I want to use the prime example of the organization known as Zion's Watchtower, which was later transferred and turned into Watchtower. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, the religion that you all know, which is owned by the company Watchtower, wasn't always what you think it is. And I think it's really important you guys understand what they turned it into. And when I say they, I don't know who they are. I want to be perfectly honest. I only know bits and pieces, and my information is scattered through documentation, through personal eyewitness accounts, etc., etc. So remember, when you're hearing these things, don't take it as concrete. This could be wrong, and we need to look at the facts as much as we can and understand that this is just the information that we have, and based on what we have, this is what we know. With absolute certainty, we know that he proclaimed that he was a Zionist supporter. And if he was a Zionist supporter, if you look up the definition, it's a person who believes in the development and the protection of Jewish nation in what is now known as Israel. So that during his time period, Israel wasn't established. That was their number one goal. Wealthy other Zionists were also pushing this. That was his primary function. So I think everything else that was happening is secondary to this overall goal. Okay, so we know that he's a Zionist. We know that he's pro, obviously, Israel. So we need to kind of think about, like, some of the people he's associated were also Zionists. And so the rumor is that these other Zionists were working together. They're helping him start his church, and they wanted to create a Jewish/Christian religion which would be palatable for Christians to start adopting Jewish belief systems. So a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, weird practices, belief systems, things that they do are kind of off the wall, a little bit different than other Christians, like refuse blood, and all that kind of stuff. Those things are Zionists, which are Jewish in nature, and that's it. Now, let's kind of talk about some of the other kind of oddball things. Okay, so the thing that doesn't really make sense is if you're pro-Jewish and you're into Jerusalem, they're not big fans of tarot cards and that kind of like witchcraft. It's actually forbidden. So why is witchcraft, especially tarot cards and things of that nature, which they view as witchcraft, being put into the literature if they're pro-Zionist? This is one of those things that I don't have an explanation for. I don't know why. Because why are you putting occult material when your goal is to create, a Jewish religion? So the thing that really gets to me that I don't understand, and it's kind of like a weird, it's like, okay, why do they have all this weird stuff with the tarot cards? Why do they have all this Zionist stuff? Well, they believe in Zionism, supposedly, but then why are they associating themselves with these secret societies, like the Freemasons? Like these things don't make a whole lot of sense unless you realize maybe he doesn't realize what he's doing. Maybe someone else is influencing him and he doesn't really know what he's doing because he's just so cocky and he thinks to the boss, but then he's being manipulated. Okay, so there's three things that are the ultimate goal that we're 100% positive that he wants. He wants to merge religions, so he wants to have Judaism and Christianity merge into a hybrid. He's perfectly open about this. He wants Israel as a state, perfectly open about this, works with people who have the same goals, so we know he wants to do this, and he wants to remove the Trinity. So these are the three things that we know for certain, and the other stuff that we're just talking about, like I said, you know, sprinkle this little bit of salt, you know, we don't really know if it's completely accurate or not, but we do know, and we can think about, okay, if his goal is to get Israel as a state, you have to have connections worldwide. So obviously, if that's your goal and you want to actually make it happen, you're going to have to put yourself in a position where you're working with people who are shady, period. Because world leaders, agencies, banks, all these things, they're always shady. We know it, you know it, there's no reason to deny that. So no matter what I think or what you think, the fact of the matter is, for him to acquire goal number 2, he has to work with the dirtiest of dirty people in order to make this happen. You have to put yourself into the, let's say, the game. Okay, so we know he's got to be part of the game, so he's got to play their game in order to get that goal. But let's say that he actually believes that he needs to do this, or he's supposed to do this for whatever reason. So we know in order to do this, you have to get in bed with dirty, dirty, dirty people. And that would explain why Watchtower, you know, got associated where it was being partially owned by banks. And when I say that Watchtower is being funded by, from what I've been told, Chase Bank, and then by the Rockefellers. And then we start thinking about the connections of Hollywood. We start thinking about all these political connections to the Democrat Party and all this other stuff. And then you can start seeing the fracturing of what the organization used to be. Because under Charles Taze Russell, it wasn't perfect or anything of that nature, but it wasn't the disgusting mess that you see today. And one of the reasons that I think is really interesting is like when he would talk about when there was a problem with somebody in the church itself would openly discuss it, like when they're getting together, and then they would decide on what they're going to do as a whole. So it wasn't Charles Taze Russell's religion, it was their religion, and they did things together as a whole. Now, as the Zionist thing started to take over, you start to see that start to change. And then by the time we get to, let's say, the second president, this connection with Hollywood, everything else is just completely changing. And the thing about this that I really noticed is the first president, the first president, which would have been Judge Russell. Russell hated Charles. And there's so much stuff about that guy's past, and he was involved in crimes and everything else. You know, there's an entire channel out there called like Watching the Watchtower or whatever, but I've talked to you guys about it before, and they have, you know, step-by-step analysis and the data and everything to support that information, showing you like his brother shot somebody, they were involved in organized crime and all this other crap. And then when you start to pay attention to that and you start seeing like what Watchtower became, I think it's a high probability that Watchtower got associated with Hollywood because of its Jewish connections. And the Jews are connected to, obviously, organized crime. That's how they ended up in New York. And then how they ended up getting the docks in New York is obviously because of their criminal connections. And then we know that in order to get things like the docks in New York, you have to be paying your toes to these, you know, crime syndicates and all this other crap. So we know that just by the way New York operates and by the way things, like you can't get past the organized crime of New York during the time period that they were there. So we know that they were associated with organized crime. Like there's no getting past that. What they were doing, we have no idea. The only thing we do know that Jehovah's Witnesses were doing is they were sneaking booze from Mexico into the U.S., which that's documented. We know about this. People, whistleblowers, talk about that. But what I wanted to get to you guys is you can have something that starts out as benign and it slowly starts to change. And if you don't hold on to what is yours and you just let these aristocrats take over, they're going to start to pollute what your belief systems were, what your religion was, and then turn it into one of their tools. And so Watchtower is no longer a religious organization. It's a CIA operative. And we know it's a CIA operative because you can follow... Well, okay, let's hold off for a second here. I am saying it's a CIA operative based on information that I've seen and been told by my resources. So that doesn't mean anything to you. You should take it with a grain of salt. But if you do research the CIA, the things that they do, they say, and their weird connections to the organization of Watchtower, you'll see that there are too many connections that it seems unlikely that they're all coincidences. Like how they have been in court 10,000 times, and yet they have never been raided. They have never had anything seriously happen to the headquarters of the organization. Nothing. Yes, Kingdom Halls have been raided, but those Kingdom Halls are private. You guys don't know how it works, but the Kingdom Halls are actually owned by the congregations, and so they were their own private entity. They weren't even actually part of Watchtower. So even if the Kingdom Hall gets raided, they can't directly associate it to Watchtower itself. Now, the court system has realized that the blue file system, which is used, has now been exposed, and so there is this connection because there's a crime being taken place. So if something happens to a young person, Jehovah's Witnesses at their local church, which is called a Kingdom Hall, they say, oh, person A and B were doing something with person C. We are going to investigate this. We're going to talk to people. We found out that, victim has said they did this, and perpetrator A and B admitted to doing this, and they feel bad, and so we believe them that they are not ever going to do it again. They get this written in their little blue file. This gets stored at the local Kingdom Hall as one of their records. A copy of it is made. That copy is then sent to the legal department, to Watchtower, and then it gets handed from person to person, and then eventually gets uploaded into their actual database. We now know this to be 100% true. This is seen in the court records with all the lawsuits, and then, so now we know that. So now we need to figure out, okay, now that we know that criminal cases are taking place, and we know the process which is being used, we know how we can engage them and how we can get that information and we can expose it. So now you've kind of got this idea about how companies, religions can be acquired due to good or bad intentions, and then they can be taken over by agencies, and then they're going to use them for propaganda. Think about this while you watch this.
The most expensive real estate on earth.
Yeah, and and the Mar-a-Lago property is not worth $18 million. I mean, that's absurd.
Isn't it like 18 acres?
Yeah, it's huge. It covers both sides of the little, key or whatever you call it, the little island. But the bigger question is the question that was first raised by the presidency of Richard Nixon, that is now coming to fruition with the presidency and the kind of ex-presidency of Donald Trump. We have a democratic system that favors Trump in the sense that he won in 2016. He's winning the primary right now for Republicans in 2024. But you have a bureaucracy that is dead set against him. And the rhetoric amounts to a very odd claim. They essentially say, we want to keep him off the ballot. We want to put him in prison. We want to bankrupt him so he can't become the president, even if the people support him. We want to deprive the people of making the decision. So you want to take it out of the realm of politics and into the realm of administrative justice or the criminal justice system, right, and adjudicate it in that way on bogus pretexts. I mean, the cases are bogus. And so the question that we're raising is, who actually rules in this country? Is it the American people who get to decide by their vote who represents them in the government? Or is it the permanent bureaucracy that has accumulated so much power? It is a contest of how we think of our democratic system. And I'm of the mind that the people should decide, not the bureaucracy. And this is a contest where Democrats are saying, essentially, we have to destroy democracy in order to save democracy. Democracy has very different meanings in the two usages in that sentence. We have to destroy democracy as we've traditionally known it, electing a president through a vote of the people, in order to save democracy, which is ruled by expert opinion, ruled by the bureaucracy, and essentially left-wing hegemony, left-wing domination over institutions. And as someone who tries to maximize whatever I can do to push forward on these issues politically, it's not lost on me that if they can wipe out someone like Donald Trump, you know, we're all table stakes relatively.
Yeah.
And they're going to have no hesitation, because once they cross the Rubicon, metaphorically speaking, you know, that's when dissent becomes a crime.
Yeah, that's the point.
Now, when you see that and you hear that and you think about that, is that not creepy? How similar Watchtower's abusive nature is identical to the same procedures that we're seeing in politics. Now, is that a coincidence? I find it highly unlikely, because think about that. What does the left do to people? They force you to believe that your family is dangerous. Your family isn't really your family. Your true family are the other LGBT, A, B, C, D, F, G people. And that nobody cares about you but them. That same ideology is used in Watchtower. That your brothers and sisters are not your biological brothers and sisters. They're these random people you don't know shit about, you never see, you don't know nothing about, except for when you show up at this random building, and then you go walk around and don't talk about anything and pretend that you know about the Bible. The other thing I want to point out is the hypocrisy of them saying in order to save your family, you have to disown your family, which is the same ideology that they have. In order to save freedom, you have to remove freedom. See, these contradictions of reality are very important. So cults, and that's what they are. Watchtower is a cult. The Democrat Party has become a cult. Most governmental agencies have become cult-like. Politics are cult-like in certain aspects. And Watchtower is seriously identical. Like, it's creepy to see that, okay, yeah, you go and you talk out against the left. They come after you every way they can to destroy your reputation. What does Watchtower do? They come after you and they try to destroy your reputation. It's identical. The reason they're identical is probably because the same people who are controlling the Dems are controlling the JWs. It's not a coincidence that they behave the same, act the same, in order to behave the same way. There's no way that these two things are identical. So the question is, and the reason you're seeing this video and the reason I'm showing you this is, whoever is controlling this cult group is controlling this other cult group, and they're working together. Why? These are questions that you should be asking yourself. What is their ultimate goal? And the answer is simple. They want total control of every aspect of your life.
When somebody doesn't want you to be a person, when somebody doesn't want you to think for yourself, do you honestly think they have your well-being in mind? Or do you think they have their well-being in